Now let us understand the thermodynamic principles of metallurgy. See, we need to know this, what is basically the thermodynamic principle behind these metallurgical processes. We know for any reaction to be feasible or spontaneous, the delta G of the reaction must be negative. And we also know that this delta G of the reaction is equal to delta H minus T delta S, where your delta H is the enthalpy change and delta S is the entropy change. Now, that is, you need to know that we usually try to make these reactions in the liquid state. The reason is because the entropy is higher. And if this delta S is positive, that we have to know that this temperature above which what will happen is this whole process will become negative and is more than this what? Delta H, because delta H usually in these processes are positive. So it is this factor which makes this process or this summation of these as negative, and it is what? The temperature. So that is why above what temperature this term becomes bigger than this one, so that the summation of these is negative. It decides that at what temperature that particular ore is to be heated. So that's the basic principle of the metallurgy, that for any metallurgical reaction delta G should be negative, and above what temperature it is to be heated we can find out by finding out its delta H and delta S value. There is another thing, like if we want to reduce this Fe2O3 into Fe, we want to know, we want to do this, and we know that this process, if it is done along with the coke or with carbon, definitely changing it into carbon monoxide or carbon dioxide, is a thermodynamically what? Non-spontaneous process with delta G what? Positive. It will not take place on its own. Then what we do is, we allow this reaction to take place in presence of another reaction which is thermodynamically feasible and spontaneous, and whose delta G is negative and much more higher in the magnitude than this one. So when these two are coupled together, the overall delta G becomes what? Negative. So that's called coupling of reaction. It's done everywhere. It's even in our body, whatever we eat, that energy which is released by the combustion of the food is converted into ATPs, and then ATP releases energy as and when required in the different cells and the manufacturing or the preparation of the large macromolecules which are required for our body. So same thing is done here. If there is a metallurgical process which is thermodynamically non-spontaneous, it is coupled with another reaction which is thermodynamically what? Which is very much spontaneous, and so that the overall delta G is negative. Let us understand this with the help of an application of this one, which is the extraction of Fe from iron oxides. See, this is done in blast furnace. In the blast furnace, the temperature maintained is from 500 Kelvin to around 2100 Kelvin. Now what we do in this blast furnace is, we put ores of iron, we put coke, and we put calcium carbonate lime. Now this calcium carbonate on heating gives you calcium oxide and the CO2. The CO2 combines with coke and form carbon monoxide. Now this process again releases energy. Moreover, the coke, what we do is we blow hot oxygen from the bottom side of this blast furnace. This coke combines with the oxygen and forms carbon monoxide, which another again releases a lot of energy in this. Now we have two reducing agents. The reducing agents present in the blast furnace are two, coke and carbon monoxide. Now thermodynamically it is found that carbon monoxide is a very good reducing agent when the temperature is below 800 Kelvin. Whereas the coke is a very good reducing agent when the temperature is above 800 Kelvin. So what we find is, in the upper half of the blast furnace, it is the carbon monoxide which is acting as the reducing agent, whereas in the lower half of the blast furnace, where the temperature is above 800 Kelvin, it is the coke which is the reducing agent. Now how they reduces, let us understand this. What is done in this is, in the blast furnace, like if we are having hematite ore, carbon monoxide combines with this to form Fe, FeO plus CO2. Then this FeO combines with carbon monoxide to give you Fe plus CO2. Even if we have magnetite Fe3O4 with this, what we get is first FeO, ferrous oxide, they are reduced to ferrous oxide, and this ferrous oxide combines with this to give you what? Fe plus CO2. This CO2 obtained again combines with coke and releases more energy and again forms carbon monoxide, and this process goes on. If suppose by some chance some of this iron oxides remains in the doesn't get reduced and they moves down to the lower higher temperature, what we find is at the lower higher temperature it is the coke which is there to reduce them, like this one, it gets changed into iron directly along with carbon monoxide. Or if we have some of the ferrous oxide, coke reduces it into iron and forms carbon monoxide. So this is how it is reduced, and iron being heavier one settles down at the bottom of this. So from here iron gets collected out, and the iron collected is called pig iron. And along with this you need to understand what is the use of the adding of the lime is, because calcium oxide in this is basically acting as a flux. It combines with the impurities, gangue particles which are there in the form of the silica oxide, and this forms calcium silicate, the slag. Now it's a non-fusible, slag has to be non-fusible, so it lies, and being lighter in the density, it lies above this, so this is the place for the slag, and from here it is being separated out. So this is how the metallurgy of the iron or the extraction of the crude iron is done from the iron oxide ores, with the use of what the simple thermodynamic principles, in which we know the basic technique was thermodynamically non-spontaneous, but when it is allowed to take place with the oxidation of coke or carbon monoxide, it becomes feasible.